Okay, so in this video I'm going to go over lesson 27, the paragraph, just the second part of the paragraph. So I'm calling this part 2, point 2. If you look at page 188, sorry, in your textbook, you have to hand in the translation of the first part of the full paragraph, so just that first paragraph from Kai hoi Pharisaioi all the way down to line 6, epokrinetai. You need to hand that in for marks. That should be pretty clear by now if you read the online transition plan. And if you look under assignments on the left-hand side of your screen on Blackboard, you can see what all the assignments are. One of them is translating that paragraph and submitting it. But I'm going to break down the second paragraph on page 188 for you, just as a way to sort of help you to understand what's going on. If you haven't translated the first part, do that before you watch this video. I think you just get more out of this video if you do that. And I'm going to try to go through it fairly quickly, try to keep my videos short because my internet sucks at home and it takes forever to upload these. So I'm going to try to keep this as a short video. If you need to pause it while you're going through it, do that. Write this down as I go. I'm just going to try to breeze through everything and highlight some important stuff as I go, and I'll just be translating it as I go. So I broke down the paragraph into individual sentences. As you can see, I just separated them out, and then I can write out what I'm doing as I go. Okay, so let's do this. First sentence in that paragraph is ekalisan un hoi Pharisaioi ton anthropon palin kai epon autoi doxa toi theoi. Okay, so then the Pharisees called. This is called from kaleo. It's an aorist. The Pharisees called ton anthropon, the man, back or again, palin. So the Pharisees then called the man back, and they said, apon, they said to him, doxa toi theoi, glory be to God. That's the first sentence. Let's move right on to the second sentence. There's nothing difficult about this other than if you haven't remembered apon, which is a second aorist of lego, just to speak or to say, they said to him. Okay, so let's go here. There's some weird stuff here. So, hemes ismen tain aletheon ho Jesus harmotolos estin. Okay. The only weird thing here is you don't know what ismen means, but if you look at your vocabulary helper, it tells you. I will also point out that this is a new vocab word for the next lesson, lesson 28. Just to anticipate that, you will learn what ismen is and how to decline it. How to conjugate it next lesson. This says, we know tain aletheon, we know the truth. Ismen here means to know. Specifically, we know. It's first person plural. And it's present active indicative. We know the truth. Jesus is hamartolos, sinful. Hamartia means sin, hamartolos means sinful. Okay, moving on to the next sentence. That was fairly easy. Here we have epikrithe un ekenos autois uk oida e harmotolas estin alatada oida tuflos pola ete on arti blepo. This one's actually pretty tricky. Let's see if we can make sense of it here. Let's just do this first little bit. Then, whenever you get a historical narrative, you get lots of uns, and you just translate them as then, post positive. First part of your sentence translation. Then, ekenos, literally that man, just he. This is the man born blind. This is the once blind man. He, epikrithe autois. He said to them. Epikrithe here is third person singular aorist passive. This is from a new vocab word, krino, with the prefix apo, so apokrino. And when you see apokrino in the middle, it doesn't mean to separate, choose, judge, or decide, which is what krino, or just basically apokrino, means. If you look very closely at the small print on page 186 in your new vocab, apokrino has a special middle sense where it can mean reply or to answer. Now, you might be asking, well, why is it middle? Because it's a passive ending. Aorist passives are only passive; they're not middle passives. Well, we also learned, and if you forgot, you can look back in your text. Some aorist passives do get translated as if they have a middle sense. So you can see this on page 183, the paragraph right before point 172. If you see those little numbers on the left column. So certain aorist passive verbs have a special middle or reflexive sense. This is one of them. Apokrino means to answer or reply in the passive or middle passive, or it can mean that. It often does mean that. Apokrino means often to answer. In discourse, you'll see it all the time. So, to reiterate, then he said, or he replied, or answered them. And then here's what he said. How do we know that? It begins with a capital uk, oida. So I do not know. Oida is, again, new vocab for next lesson. Your vocabulary helper at the bottom of page 188 will tell you that it means I know. So here, I do not know whether, in direct discourse, whether he supplied is sinful, hamartolos. But this I do know, or alternatively, but I know this. And here's the tricky part. I'll just translate and then I'll explain it to you. Although being blind for many years, palete means many years. Although being blind for many years, just now I see. So let's look at this carefully here. Own is the participle of to be. Since the verb is in the first person singular, we can say although I was, or although I have been, or although I being blind for many years, just now I see. Something like that. Okay, this is the tricky word here, ete. Why is it tricky? Short words are tricky in Greek just because they're short. It's hard to see what's the stem and what's the ending, that sort of thing. But it's trickier for another reason. It's tricky because it is a epsilon sigma stem third declension noun, and epsilon sigma stems are the hardest of the third declension. So I actually went down here, and I'll just copy this. I went down here and I explained what all this is. Let me change the font so you can see what's going on here. What I'll do is I'll just push everything down onto this page here. So this is the sentence we're trying to translate. It's actually a terrible font. Color. We'll do that. So here's the word in the discourse, ete. Here I've reiterated it. It means years, right? It's third declension neuter with an epsilon sigma stem. Here's how the whole word declines. So again, epsilon sigma stems are the hardest of the third declension. You get ta etos in the nominative singular, right? Why is that weird? Because it looks like a masculine singular ending. Os is a masculine singular ending. Tu etus also looks weird. Toi ete doesn't look as weird because you have that iota here, which tells you that it's a dative, right? Iotas go with datives. And then you have ton etos, or sorry, that should be just ta. This is neuter, not masculine. It's just ta etos. Again, right? This is standard. Neuter nouns. It's the identical endings in the nominative and the accusative. And then here's where you're seeing your tricky part. Ta ete, right? This looks like a singular feminine nominative ending, but it's not. It is the epsilon sigma ending for the neuter plural in the nominative case. Why? So it's an epsilon sigma stem plus an alpha, a standard alpha in the for the neuter, right? You know that, right? Neuter plurals have alpha endings for their nominative and accusative cases. You're used to that. Look, right here, you see it here, ta. But because it's an epsilon sigma stem, what happens is the sigma drops out, right? So you're left with epsilon plus alpha, which contracts into an eta, right? And that's just frustrating because it looks like a feminine singular nominative ending, but it's not, right? So you just need to remember that some nouns have this. There's very few of them do, but ete, it comes from etos, is one of them. Okay, so let me just reiterate that last part. Tuflas Paula Palete, own, being blind for many years. Just now I see. Okay, so there it is. If you're interested, pause the video and just write out those endings. It's good to memorize those and to be aware that this doesn't look plural at all, but it is plural. Okay, let's move on. Erotesan un auton pos aneokthesan su hoi ophthalmoi ? Then they asked him. Keep in mind, erotesan comes from erotao, to ask. So then they asked him, pos, how, right? And this anticipates the question mark we're getting here. How, I'll just translate this and explain it. How were your eyes opened? This here is third person plural, aorist passive. Of your new vocab word, anoigo, which means to be opened. This is were opened, right? Aorist passive, so were passive opened. So how were the eyes of you, right? Su, or your eyes, how were your eyes opened? Let's just keep moving along. Epikrithe autois. So we've already seen this. Epikrithe comes from apokrino. In this middle, it's a passive, right? But it has a special reflexive sense here. He replied, or answered them. I suppose we should say answer because they asked him a question, so he's answering them. I told you already. Epon humen ede. I told you already. Kai and uk akusate. You did not listen. Right? This is from akuo. It's just an aorist. Second person plural. So you plural did not listen. Why, athelata, why do you wish akuane to hear again? And then he ends the discourse by asking a final question. And this one's kind of fun. So me kai humes athelata autu mathetai genesthai. This is actually a bit tricky. So the may here is not a negation. It's anticipating a negative answer. Right? It's just like RMA or moan that you learned in the last lesson. May by itself in a question just anticipates an answer in the negative. So something like, even you don't wish to become his disciples, do you? Right? Something like, even you don't wish to become his disciples, do you? Or something like, I guess I'm not quite sure where I want to put the kai here because it could be and or also or even. Maybe you don't even wish to become his disciples, do you? Something like that. Genesthai, it tells you this in your vocab helper on page 188, bottom of page 188. It comes from gignomai, which means to become. Of course, as a philosopher, I see this word all the time. Genesthai means to become. And the man is just sort of replying to the Pharisees here and saying, you know, why do you want to know all this? It's not like you want to become his disciples, do you? And keep in mind, mathetai here can mean students, but in the New Testament context, we're used to calling the students of Jesus his disciples. So I think it's applicable to call them disciples here. But keep also in mind that it has that connotation of becoming students. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions via email and I can answer them. Otherwise, good luck translating the first part of this paragraph. I hope that went well. Make sure you submit it for marks, and next time you hear from me, I will go over lesson 28.